It is everyone's favorite segment, and that is Soundbite. Soundbite is where Steve and I talk about different post-game interviews. Someone says something kind of interesting, or if there's perhaps a fist fight that breaks out during a baseball game, something that, happens we want to listen to, we take a listen. So in case you didn't pick up on that, on Saturday, there was a baseball game between the Cleveland Guardians and the Chicago White Sox. Jose Ramirez was sliding into second base where Tim Anderson was playing, and 30 seconds later, there was a fist being thrown. Benches were being cleared, and suspensions were handed out. So let's take a look at this fist fight.
Oscar's throw is not in time.
He just missed him at second base. This is another rocket of a throw, and now...
Oh, boy.
Now
oh, my goodness. Here come the benches. Off we go. It started with Anderson and Ramirez. Swings being taken. Kopech had to hold him back, and everybody's spilling out here in Cleveland.
Well, now they come running out of the bullpen, which is a bit late, but they're adding some support to the effort. And that was one of the few that you actually saw coming to blows. You don't see that too often. And Timmy is still hot about this.
So there you have it. That is the intense bench clearing fight between those two guys. My mom said this to me last night, Steve, and she has a good point. When I said to her, did you see the baseball fight? And she's like, no. And I showed her, and she's like, oh, it's like a real fight. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? She's like, I thought it was like a sports fight, like where guys are kind of shoving and getting to his faces, but like they put hands up, which is a good point. Like it's a legitimate like fight. So as we mentioned at the start of the show, this just came out either today or yesterday, I don't remember, but Tim Anderson got a 6-game suspension. Jose Ramirez got a 3-game suspension. Steve, you had mentioned to me when this video happened, like why this got so intense and the reason that both teams like got involved. So if you want to speak a little bit to that for our audience.
There are unwritten rules in baseball, and there's things that, like if their pitcher hits one of your guys, well, then your pitcher goes out and plunks one of their guys. So like there's unwritten rules that when somebody crosses the line, you have to be the one to hold that up because the umps aren't going to. What you're seeing here is the unwritten rule that I guess Ramirez had an issue with on this, which he says that he's had issues with Tim Anderson prior to this game. So I don't know what the context is with that, but after the tag, he's standing over top of him and he doesn't move, allowing the runner to stand up. Now, as a former baseball player, the only reason that I can think I'd be doing that is if the umpire didn't get a good angle and you want to hold the tag, you want to see if the guy tries to take his hand off the bag to dust himself off. When Ramirez stands up, he is the one that puts his finger in Anderson's face. He is the one that seems to be initiating the initial argument. But then when Anderson takes his glove off and throws it down and throws his hands up, that is when it really took a turn for the worst. And you see there's all these White Sox guys around Ramirez, and he's just standing there blindly throwing, and he ends up catching Tim Anderson with a blind punch, something that, Ramirez didn't even see himself throw that punch, and it catches him. And a lot of things I'm seeing, this has been coming for Anderson for a while. This is something that fans are really polarized about because you either love him or you hate him.
I can't speak to the whole baseball culture part of it, but I definitely can say you're right. So Anderson got 3 games more because he was the initiator. He was the aggressor, like with being the first one to throw his hands up.
Yeah, but I also think it's because he has a history with the flipping off fans in the crowd. Like you can Google Tim Anderson middle finger, and there is a picture of him going like this to the fans on that. Like it was all over ESPN. They blurred it out. Like he has a history of poor behavior.
If they use that as part of the criteria, then shame on the MLB. I don't think you should be using other past incidents to make a ruling for this one specific one. I just don't find that very fair. But here's what I'll say, and I think this is a fair point from a outside, like I don't watch a whole lot of the MLB, so from an outside perspective, here's what I'll say. Ramirez is sliding head first into second base. And now I understand in any sport, if you're standing over top of someone for an excessive amount of time, it is annoying. It is kind of intimidating and like, yo, like, get off me. I understand that. I also understand what you're saying, Steve, about like, you don't want to be tagging people in the head because, get hit in the head. It's just like, hey, man, like, it's not something we do. And I understand that as well. But what did you want Anderson to do? Like, all he does is catch and go right down and tag. He has no choice but to tag his head and like whatever he has there. And I also understand the fact, like I just said, about standing over him too long. But like you said, you don't know what the call is. You don't know if they're going to review something, if they need to check something. So I would also be frozen until there is an official call made and I get an all clear from someone, be like, okay, you can kind of relax now. But yeah, throwing off the glove and putting the hands up is clearly taking an extra step. Although, like you said, Ramirez, getting in his face and doing that is also not great, but you're not escalating it to actually throwing hands. Unless you're taking it a step too far, like you're insulting somebody's family, you're making threats, you're clearly being over the top excessive, where it's like man to man, forget being an athlete, like that's disrespectful and it needs to be checked. Fighting in a sport over sports things like that, where it's standing over top, hitting a head, whatever, is just ridiculous. Like, it's heat of the moment. You're competing. Things happen. There's steps you can take other than physically fighting to work things out. And like, usually stuff like that causes the fist fights, or it's over in a matter of seconds. So like you said, the whole thing seemed trivial and I just found it excessive, and everything that happened could have been explained. Not a great look for either one of these guys. Again, Anderson, 6-game suspension. Ramirez, a 3-game suspension. Just an unfortunate incident for these two guys. But hey, that was today's soundbite. Hope everyone enjoyed. I think this was the first, like, sports moment we took at the soundbite. Like, an actual, like, piece of a game.
Yeah.
So, like, not like something happened before or after. So, little soundbite history. But hope you enjoyed it. Today's soundbite.
Listen to the sound. I listen to the sound.